This is a true story that happened to me in the city of Mirorod. It was the mid-2000s. I was working as a director of logistics for a large conglomerate specializing in the production and distribution of mineral water. One of the brands under this conglomerate was a well-known Mirorodska mineral water, famous throughout the former USSR. The factory producing this water was located in Mirorod. Mirorod is a city with a rich history, officially over 500 years old. It has long been famous for its mineral springs and has been a sought-after resort since the days of the Russian Empire. During the 18th and 19th centuries, many aristocratic families bought land here and built lavish summer estates. Nobles frequently visited these estates in the summer to drink mineral water and restore their health. Time passed, the aristocratic era faded into history, but their grand mansions still stood, solid fortresses of stone and brick. During the Soviet era, these noble estates were converted into state-run hotels. After the collapse of the USSR, they became private once again, but most remain hotels. Typically, these were 2- or 3-story buildings with spacious rooms, high ceilings, and large windows. The wide granite staircases with intricately carved railings were a distinctive feature of these homes. These private mansion hotels were incredibly beautiful, opulent, and furnished in the style of the 18th and 19th centuries. While on a business trip to Mirorod, I stayed in one of these former aristocratic mansions. The house was enormous, 8 rooms and 2 bathrooms on the first floor, with the same layout on the second. Surrounding the staircase leading to the upper level were vast hallways, both upstairs and downstairs. The rooms themselves were immense, about 40 to 50 square meters each, with 2 floor-to-ceiling windows and a stone fireplace in every room. It was winter, and after a long workday, I enjoyed returning to my room, ordering dinner. The hotel offered a home-cooked meal service, and then settling into an antique rocking chair by the fireplace. There, I would watch the fire crackle, listening to the howling blizzard outside. Sometimes, I would turn toward the window, watching the snowfall while the flames in the fireplace flickered and crackled soothingly. After this visual and auditory spa treatment, I would crawl into an enormous oak bed with a thick down comforter and feather mattress. The hotel was magnificent, both grand and unique in its atmosphere. Most remarkably, it had only 2 guests, myself and an engineer from Kiev, who was also on a business trip. The likely reason for the hotel's low occupancy was its exorbitant room rates, which were beyond the reach of private individuals. Only organizations could afford to book accommodations here for their executives or specialists. The hotel owners did not stay overnight. They would leave at 11 p.m., locking the main entrance until 6 a.m. By 6 a.m., they were already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for the 2 of us, which was served at 7 a.m. My daily routine was simple. 7 a.m., a hearty breakfast 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., work at the factory 7 p.m., dinner at the hotel, always authentic Ukrainian cuisine, absolutely delicious. After dinner, relaxing in my room, checking emails, or simply gazing at the fire or watching the occasional passerby outside. For the second week in a row, the weather followed an almost scripted pattern. Every evening, the snowfall would begin, intensifying to a small storm at night, only to calm down by morning. The internet at the hotel was slow, allowing me only to check my emails, but not stream any videos. With little else to do in the evenings, I went to bed early, around 9 p.m. Surprisingly, this quiet and unhurried lifestyle suited me perfectly. It provided a much-needed break from the frantic pace of the capital. I truly felt like I was on vacation in a resort town. My business trip was scheduled to last from December through the end of winter. Eventually, I got to know the engineer, a well-educated and pleasant young man named Dimitro, who was about 25 years old. After dinner, we would sit in the grand first-floor hall, each in an oversized leather armchair draped with real bear pelts, making them not only comfortable but also warm. A velvet throw blanket was also provided in case the evening chill set in. Between the armchairs stood a carved mahogany coffee table, and a massive fireplace completed the cozy setting. A wide granite staircase, now blocked off with a red ribbon, led to the second floor. The owners had explained on my first day that the upper floor was unoccupied and unsafe due to its deteriorating condition. They had firmly asked us not to go up there. After dinner, Dimitro and I would sometimes play chess or a game of cards. One evening, the hotel owner offered us a taste of their family's homemade brandy, a recipe passed down through generations. The deep amber liquid, served in crystal glasses, shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. Its taste was exquisite. After just one glass, 100 milliliters, a pleasant warmth spread through my body, relaxing every muscle. Conversations grew slower, and soon the only thing I longed for was to sink into my soft feather bed and drift into sleep. Interestingly, after drinking this brandy, I always had exceptionally vivid and pleasant dreams, waking up feeling refreshed and full of energy. It was less of a drink and more like an elixir of health and happiness. One evening, as we sipped our brandy, we gazed out the large window as swirling snow vortex dancing around a giant fir tree in the mansion's garden. The snowflakes seemed to play tag, whirling upward and then gently settling on the low-hanging branches. By the way, Sash, do you know the history of this mansion? Dimitro asked without taking his eyes off the window. Never really looked into it. I replied, you should. It's quite an interesting story. The factory's archivist, a very elderly woman, told me about it today. Her grandmother, who lived next door to this hotel in the 1950s, shared it with her. Back then, the building was the residence of the city council chief, but he suddenly moved out without explanation, and the mansion was turned into a hotel. However, it was frequently closed down due to complaints from guests, though the nature of these complaints remained a mystery. Rumors circulated that the building was structurally unsound, although there were no visible signs of this. Dimitro went on to explain that the house was built in the 19th century by a wealthy Polish aristocrat for his daughter, who was known for hosting extravagant parties. However, something happened, something so significant that the family abandoned the mansion, leaving it unoccupied until the October Revolution. What exactly occurred remained a secret, as the locals were reluctant to discuss it. Over the years, the mansion served various purposes: a hotel, a city council office, a hospital, and even a communal apartment. But every time, residents would leave, and the building would be locked up until someone else decided to move in. Interesting story, I said after a brief pause. Though it's not surprising why the owners keep changing. Why do you think that is? Dimitro asked. The upkeep must be expensive, and as you can see, there are hardly any guests. It's simply not profitable. I nodded thoughtfully. Maybe you're right. As New Year's Eve approached, the hotel owners asked us about our holiday plans. Both Dimitro and I intended to return to Kiev on December 31st. Relieved, the owners revealed they were also leaving to visit relatives in western Ukraine, with their train departing on December 30th. Before they left, they asked us to lock up the hotel securely when we departed. They would return on January 3rd, while we planned to come back around mid-January. We exchanged phone numbers and wished each other a happy new year. Did they ask again what time we were leaving tomorrow? Sometime around noon. We answered since we planned to take the high-speed train to Kiev, get home not too late, and have time to prepare for the holiday. We left for work, and a little later, they went to the train station. Coming home after work, Dmitri and I were pleasantly surprised. The host had left sandwiches for dinner in our rooms, pitchers of compote, and in my room, a small decanter of wonderful homemade cognac. They made sure we wouldn't go to bed on an empty stomach. After enjoying the sandwiches, we ended up in the armchairs as usual, sipping the cognac. I suddenly thought I heard music from the second floor. I could clearly make out a violin and a cello. Dima, do you hear music by any chance? I turned to the engineer. I always have music playing in my head, Dima smiled. I mean real music. I waved my hand. It feels like there's music coming from the second floor. Why would there be music up there? Dmitri asked, glancing at the staircase blocked off with tape. Must be the wind. I listened. Everything had gone silent. Yeah, probably the wind. I nodded. We sat a little longer and then went to our rooms. I laid down in bed, sinking into the feather bed. It was so soft and comfortable. When you lie on a feather bed, it feels like floating on a cloud, so cozy and gentle. Lost in my thoughts, I drifted off to sleep. I woke up to the distinct sound of music in my room. Strings had been joined by a piano and some kind of wind instrument. I don't know much about them, but a trumpet is a trumpet, just different kinds. The music was coming from the second floor. What could be playing up there? A forgotten radio turning on by itself? Lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that real instruments were playing, not a recording. Anyone who's been to a live concert will understand. Live orchestra music sounds completely different from a recording. But where would real instruments come from here? And at night, a creeping sense of unease took hold of me. I buried myself under the blanket and stayed that way all night. By dawn, everything had gone quiet. As usual, I got up at 6:40, washed up, and shaved. Since the hosts were gone, we would have to find breakfast at work or on the way there. In the hall, I met Dima. He didn't look great, as if he hadn't slept either. "Morning, Dima, you okay? You don't look so good," I asked. "You don't look much better yourself." Dima tried to smile, but it came out strained. "Heading straight home after work? Not coming back here?" I clarified. "Yeah, I'll see you after Christmas." Dima shook my hand and rushed off. I locked the door, tucked the key into my coat pocket to keep from losing it, and headed to work, wondering what kind of hallucinations had haunted me last night. Our train was at 16:45, so I threw myself into work until lunch. After 1,400 hours, only one production line was still running at the factory, while the management staff, the so-called RCC, had been sent home. With nearly 3 hours to kill, I decided to have lunch at a cafe near the station. The moment I stepped outside the factory gates, I was blinded and deafened by an unbelievable snowstorm. The howling wind pressed against my ears, and the snow fell in such a thick white wall that I couldn't see more than 2 meters ahead. The flakes flew straight into my eyes, even though the wind was at my back. It felt like the apocalypse. Luckily, the town had only one main street, at the end of which was a train station. No chance of getting lost. Right across the street from the station was a cafe I needed. I'd eaten there before and liked both the food and the reasonable prices. The cafe was small, with just 6 tables, and as soon as I entered, I spotted Dmitri at one of them. A lone cup of tea sat in front of him. Smiling, I walked over. "I thought you were taking the morning train?" I asked. "Didn't work out. Last-minute emergency, as always. Just got free half an hour ago and came straight here. Figured you'd stop by for lunch," Dima replied. "Well, here I am. Let's eat, I'm starving," I said, waving for the waiter. The waiter handed us menus. But I already knew what I wanted. Vareniki with sour cream, borscht, and 300 grams. I looked at Dima, who nodded. "Yes, and 300 grams of your local homemade vodka. And make it cold," Dmitri added. "It's always cold here," the waiter replied matter-of-factly. "And for you?" "The same," said the engineer. The waiter nodded and left. "Think we'll make the train?" Dmitri asked. I checked my watch. Exactly 1,500 hours. "We have plenty of time," I reassured him. For the next half hour, we focused on our food. I had eaten here before and knew how good the borscht and vareniki were, but Dmitri was a first-timer. From his surprised expression and the speed at which he handled his spoon, I could tell he liked it. Every now and then, I poured another round of vodka, and we silently toasted before downing it, just like grandmas. Dmitri finally said, after pushing his empty plates aside, "Took me right back to childhood. Delicious." "It really is," I agreed, finishing mine. The waiter came to clear our plates. "2 coffees, please, and the check." "All right." We finish our coffee and then head to the ticket office. "The train will be here soon." Dmitri started fussing. "Relax. We still have almost an hour. Let's stay warm a little longer. Outside is a disaster zone." "All right, fair enough. The weather is nasty." Dima agreed. Half an hour before departure, we left the cafe and went to the train station's ticket office. 2 tickets to Kiev for the express train," I said to the cashier. "The express is canceled due to weather conditions," the cashier replied. "What? When's the next train to Kiev?" I asked, stunned. 23:40, Kharkiv Lviv through Kiev. That's the soonest. The next one is at 8 o'clock on the 1st. We stood there, dumbfounded. Well, that sucks, Dima muttered. Yeah, what a mess. I agreed. So, either we celebrate New Year's on a train, or stay here and go home tomorrow. I don't want to be on a train at 4 a.m. Metro doesn't open until 6, Dmitri reasoned. Yeah, not my idea fun either. I admitted. All right, we stay here, but we get tickets for 8 o'clock. First thing in the morning, we're out of here. Sound good? Perfect, Dima agreed. We'll celebrate a little, sleep in, and head home in the morning. Settled then, I concluded. We bought the tickets and stepped outside. The blizzard had only gotten worse. Let's hit the store, pick up some stuff for the New Year's table, I suggested. The wind now hit us straight in the face, turning what was usually a 20-minute walk into an hour-long struggle. At the supermarket, we headed straight for the deli counter and stocked up on ready-made food, meat patties, roast chicken, and a bunch of salads. The best section for a bachelor or someone who doesn't cook. We didn't forget the alcohol aisle either, choosing a rather pricey bottle of whiskey. After all, it was New Year's, no point in being cheap. I grabbed a 0.7L bottle and put it in the basket. On Dima's questioning look, I explained. 0.5L is too little, 1L is too much, so I picked 0.7L. Absolutely right, the engineer nodded. We skipped the champagne. Didn't want to mix drinks and suffer in the morning. Loaded with bags, we finally made it back to the hotel by 6 in the evening. I unlocked the door and we stepped into the hall. Let's have a celebration in the hall, I suggested. Great idea, agreed the young engineer. No unwanted smells lingering in the bedrooms. We covered the coffee table with plates of appetizers, placing a bottle of whiskey at the center. I think we overdid it, I remarked, eyeing the table. Well, Dima shrugged. Whatever we don't finish, we can take with us tomorrow. And we still have over 5 hours until midnight. Plenty of time. Plenty of time, sure, but not enough room in our stomachs. I chuckled. Well, they say the way you greet the new year is how you'll spend it. So, a feast now means a year of abundance. Dima laughed. I couldn't agree more. All right, I'll light the fireplace, and you pour the amber liquid into the glasses. Let's make these 5 hours fly by. I playfully commanded. Yes, sir. Dima joined in the game. The fireplace was packed with logs, just waiting for a match. A minute later, I returned to the table. Dig in, I announced. Roger that. Dima replied in the same tone. Although we had eaten at a cafe not too long ago, we were somehow ravenous again. In just half an hour, half the appetizers were gone, and the whiskey bottle had noticeably emptied. Satisfied and content, we lounged in our chairs. Dima slowly sipped his whiskey, while I gazed at the fire through my crystal glass. The flickering flames reminded me of my childhood, when my parents bought me a kaleidoscope. The colorful glass shards formed mesmerizing patterns with each shake. Now, looking through the whiskey at the flames, I saw the same dazzling, shifting images. We need some music, Dmitri interrupted my thoughts. On it, I pulled my phone from my pocket, put in my earbuds, and tuned into nostalgia radio. For some reason, old songs always felt closer to my heart than modern ones. ABBA's Happy New Year started playing, one of my favorite New Year's songs. I noticed Dima tapping his boot in rhythm, softly singing along. A great song. Maybe, even 50 years from now, people like us will still be singing along. Who knows? Feeling sentimental. That meant the whiskey was working its magic, altering my mind's rhythm. This is nice, Dmitri concluded. Yeah, I agreed. Really nice. It's a good little town. Quiet, Dima mused. Quiet doesn't always mean good, I countered, my altered state stirring a sense of contradiction. But my peaceful mood won over. But in this case, yeah, I agree. A good, quiet town. I wouldn't mind growing old here. Health resorts, mineral water, fresh air, the forest nearby, a river. What more could a retiree want? A good pension and loving grandchildren, Dmitri laughed. Exactly, I nodded, though we're far from retirement yet. Pour another, The new year is almost here, and we still have over half a bottle left. The clock above the fireplace struck 11. Not long now. Dima glanced at his watch. The song ended, and an ad came on. I lowered the volume. As soon as I did, another sound became clear. The faint but distinct music of an orchestra coming from upstairs. Muted but unmistakable. That music again. Dima jumped from his chair. You hear it? Yeah, I nodded. I heard it yesterday, too. Thought, maybe someone left a radio on, or an old intercom activated by itself. Happens in old buildings. Radio? Dima snapped. That's no radio. It's a live orchestra. He stared at the staircase leading to the second floor, listening intently. Dima, where the hell would an orchestra come from up there? How should I know? He slumped back into his chair, reaching for the bottle. I held out my glass, and we drank in silence for a few minutes. Dima kept glancing at the stairs. His jaw tightened, his face pale and drawn. His eyes burned each time he looked at me. He was clearly unsettled. I checked myself. My whole body was tense, muscles rigid. It felt like every sense was operating at maximum capacity. My vision sharpened, my hearing heightened. My pulse pounded, adrenaline coursing through me. I was on edge too. Maybe it really is just a radio? Dmitri asked after a pause. What else could it be? Maybe a forgotten tape recorder? A laptop or a phone someone left behind? Could be anything. We sat in silence, but the music kept growing louder. Then came the sound of footsteps, muffled but rhythmic, moving in sync with music. It wasn't just one or two people. It was the sound of a crowd. I looked down at my arms. The hair stood on end. So that's what they mean by hair standing on end. Fear intensified with the swelling sound. We have to do something, Dmitri whispered. We need to go. Go where? I whispered back. Upstairs to check it out, or outside, as far from this house as possible. Dmitri, pale as a ghost, stared at the staircase, flinching with each beat of the drum. A waltz. No doubt about it. It was being played live. The instruments were distinct. The rustling of dresses, the shuffle of dancing feet. Hi! Trilling laughter. Deep, booming male laughter, like someone had told a joke and the whole party enjoyed it. This was no forgotten radio or a laptop. There was a ball happening upstairs. A real, living ball. Voices carried. And with every moment, the sense that we were in the middle of a surreal gathering deepened. I turned to Dima and nearly shouted, We need to run. This has gone too far. Even if it's some kind of prank, I don't want to be part of it. Dima looked at me with an expression of quiet resignation. It's too late, San. Too late. Why? I shouted, trying to stand, but I couldn't. I felt my legs, but they wouldn't move, like when a limb falls asleep and refuses to obey until circulation returns. I tried to, but I can't get up. Dima's eyes widened in terror. San, I'm scared. What do we do? Hands. I asked and lifted mine to my face. Hands work. I exclaimed, taking a triumphant sip from my glass. So what? Dmitri sighed. So we'll fight with our hands if we have to. Fight who? And for how long? Dima still wasn't convinced, but he took a deep drink of whiskey himself. I don't know. You hear that? I listened. It felt like we were no longer alone. Like someone's whispering behind us. Dima murmured. They're close now. I whispered back. I checked the clock. 2 minutes to midnight. Not long now. Dima, fill the glasses. What else can we do? Can you reach the bottle? Dima stretched, grabbed the whiskey. As he poured, a smile flickered across his face, like simply reaching the bottle was a small victory. Happy New Year, 2005. We clinked glasses and slowly sipped, savoring the drink. The clock began striking 12. The movement around us became tangible. Voices grew distinct. I even smelled candle wax. With each chime, everything got louder, as if a radio was being fine-tuned. I shut my eyes. Dima whispered, Goodbye, San. He felt it too. We'll get through this. I muttered. The 12th chime struck. And then, A brilliant explosion of light inside my mind. It felt as if my ears had been cleared. Music struck my consciousness like a sudden wave, yet wasn't overly loud. I could sense thousands of scents, most vividly. The smell of burnt candles, men's and women's perfumes, fine tobacco, leather, horses, and many others I couldn't identify. Gentlemen, please, a little quieter, I heard a melodic female voice say. My vision began to focus, and I found myself staring into the delicate face of a young woman seated in an armchair, dressed in early 20th century fashion. Of all the things I had expected to see, this was certainly the last. She was gazing intently into my eyes. "Spirit of the future, are you here?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "Oh, sure," along with the spirits of the past and present, came a deep male voice from behind me, followed by an explosion of laughter from the group surrounding me. The young woman flushed scarlet, clearly embarrassed by the mockery. "Serge, I beg you," she started, but her protest was cut off by an insincere apology. Sorry, Marie, I meant no offense, but this is truly hilarious. It's the 20th century, and you're summoning spirits. And of all things, spirits of the future. Has anyone even heard of such nonsense?" Laughter and murmurs filled the room. I looked at the girl. She looked at me, then I glanced down at my hands. Thin, aged fingers adorned with rings. I was seated, no, she was seated, in the very same armchair I had occupied just moments ago in a hotel. Surrounding me were men in resplendent imperial military uniforms, and women draped in airy silk dresses, adorned with glittering jewels. The older they were, the more diamonds they wore. The men, too, varied in age but were all well-groomed, many sporting extravagant mustaches and smoking pipes. Scanning the gathering, I quickly realized I was at the center of an occult seance. Their goal was to summon spirits. And the medium, apparently, was this young woman. "Mother, did it not work?" the girl asked me, her voice trembling with near tears. And in that instant, I understood the body I now occupied belonged to her mother. "Oh, but it did work," I replied, and to my astonishment, I heard my own voice, not the refined, feminine tone I expected, but the deep, familiar voice of the man I had been for nearly 30 years. You should have seen their reaction. Everyone recoiled as if I were a leper, including the young woman herself. Clearly, no one had anticipated such a turn of events. Least of all, hearing a man's voice emanate from a distinguished lady. "Who are you?" the girl whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "Me!" I boomed, deliberately exaggerating my tone, drawing from every horror movie I had ever seen as a child. For some reason, spirits in those films always spoke in a deep, ominous voice, and I instinctively imitated it. "I am a man, Alexander, born in 1979. What a performance. What a masterpiece of rehearsal. The Countess clearly has a gift." Serge's voice rang out again. "Quiet, Serge." The girl hushed it without even looking. "Are you truly a spirit from the future?" she asked, half whispering, enthralled. "Why call me a spirit? In your future, my present, I am very much a living man. And frankly, I have no idea how I ended up here." "We summoned you," the girl admitted guiltily, casting her eyes downward. "They summoned us. And who gave you the right to summon us?" Came a familiar voice. "Dima, you're here too?" I asked in surprise. "Where else would I be? These fools dragged us both here." Dima replied, his irritation palpable. "Where the hell are we?" he fumed. "A better question is, when are we?" I corrected him. "Exactly. When are we? What year is it? Dear guests. Better yet, our rather inconsiderate hosts." Dmitri pressed on. Silence. I scanned their faces. Conflicting emotions flickered in their eyes, ranging from awe to sheer terror. Their gazes darted between me and Dmitri, between the bodies we now occupied. "Well, have you lost your tongues?" Dmitri persisted. "This is brilliant, Count." Serge exclaimed again. "Why have you hidden such a talent for acting and ventriloquism?" "What talent?" Dmitri asked, bewildered. "What's your name?" "Sergei, right?" "Answer me, Sergei, what year is it?" "My name is Serge," the Hussar declared proudly. "That's what I said," Dmitri replied. It is now the year 1905. Today is New Year's Day, the young medium answered. And you dragged us here from 2005, where today is also New Year's Day. The young engineer mused aloud. How marvelous. The girl clapped her hands in delight. We did it. We really did it, Serge. And you didn't believe me. She turned to the hussar triumphantly. I still believe this is nothing but an elaborate performance by the Count and Countess, my dear Marie. You won't fool me that easily. I am a grown man of the modern age, Serge retorted. Well, that's a shame, I concluded, because it seems spirits do exist. At the very least, you've managed to summon us from the future. Prove it. Tell me about my future, the hussar challenged. Your future? That I cannot predict. I am not Google. But I can tell you about Russia and the world. And based on that, I can make an educated guess about your fate, dear Serge, I replied. First of all, there will be a world war in 9 years, and you will most likely die. And if you don't, by 1918, the Russian Empire will cease to exist. You will either flee to the West or perish in the Civil War. Nonsense. Serge objected. Why should I die? Or flee anywhere? Because nearly the entire aristocracy either emigrated or was executed. Only a few remained. I stated plainly. He will either flee or be executed, you mean? Serge corrected. Well, for you and your kind, this is all still in the future. I acknowledged. Fascinating. Marie clapped her hands in delight. Fascinating. I asked in disbelief. Don't you understand that your class has no more than 15 years left? But what will happen to Russia? An older man, adorned with medals and crosses, inquired. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to Russia. The state will change names, but it will remain great. There will be another world war. We will fight Germany again. Then there will be a period of recovery and progress. Our man, will go to space. Many achievements will follow. And later, the state will collapse, though Russia will endure, albeit not as vast as before. Dmitri interjected. But on the whole, things will be fine. For the country. Just not for the aristocracy. I concluded. Don't listen to them. Serge suddenly woke up again. Countess, aren't you ashamed of scaring the locals? He chided us reproachfully. Sergei, you're getting on my nerves, Dmitri replied. If you don't like it, don't listen. Go about your business and stop interfering. I am not Sergei to you. The hussar pursed his lips in offense. Enough of this familiarity. And put an end to this circus. It's no longer amusing. Serge, the young woman interjected. Everyone else here is interested. Her companions nodded in unison. You see? Marie turned to him. Everyone wants to continue the contact. What contact? This is nothing but a cheap charade. This guy was really starting to get on my nerves. Why are you getting so worked up? You're honestly becoming insufferable. You're the only one making noise here. If you don't like it, then leave. Get lost. Stop whining. How dare you? Serge's eyes bulged in outrage. Clearly, no one had ever spoken to him like that before. He cast a furious glance around the gathering, but no one met his gaze. Some hid their smiles, while others openly giggled. Fixing his gaze on the young woman, he declared, You will not get away with this. Then, with a dramatic flourish, he turned on his heel and strode upstairs. Silence fell over the hall. Not even a chuckle could be heard. Shall we continue, gentlemen? Dmitri's voice rang out. The crowd stirred, murmuring amongst themselves. By the way, dear Marie, when can we return? Return where? The young woman blinked in confusion. Where do you think? To our own bodies, of course. I can't stay trapped in this distinguished count forever. By the way, he suffers from rheumatism, gout, constant stomach pain, probably pancreatic issues. His bladder is useless, and I can barely breathe. The colonel has a punctured lung. Someone chimed in from behind. That explains it, Dmitri replied. And his heart is a mess. Terrible tachycardia. One moment it's hammering away. The next, you can barely hear it. Not to mention his blood pressure. But Papa never complained about his health, the young woman exclaimed. A true colonel. A real man. I respect that, Dmitri said, but just because he doesn't complain doesn't mean he's healthy. How old is he anyway? The Count is already quite advanced in age. He's 47, someone from the crowd announced. Advanced in age. Dmitri repeated quietly. Still so young, yet already falling apart like an old log. Trust me, Alexander. I believe you, I replied. And the Countess isn't faring any better. Her back is a wreck. I can't even bend over. My legs feel like they're weighed down by iron shackles, and I constantly need the restroom. I have no idea how they even manage in these dresses. I don't even want to think about what kind of toilets they had back then. Something tells me they're nothing like ours. Look at these veins on my hands. No, I want back in my own body, immediately. Marie, we've lingered here long enough. Bring us back. I turned to the young woman. I don't know how, she murmured. What do you mean? You don't know? Dmitri started to fume, leaping from his chair. Come on, do whatever you did before. Read your spell. Get us back. The young woman shrank into her chair, pale as death. I want my papa and mama back too. She whispered. Dima, calm down. I said, try to soothe the engineer. Yelling won't help. Let's think this through. So this is real? Not a prank? Someone in the crowd asked. Dmitri sighed heavily and slumped back into his chair. Idiots, he muttered under his breath. That's why they went extinct. I want my mom and papa back. The young woman wailed, tears streaming down her face. I shot Dmitri a reproachful look. He turned away pointedly, as if to say, not my fault. Enough with the hysteria. I barked, and the girl immediately stopped crying. Thank you, Marie. Now, how exactly did you summon us? I found this book in the attic, she said, bending down to pick up an old tome from the floor. The book was massive. She struggled to lift it before handing it to me. However, I overestimated the Countess's strength. Or rather, her hands couldn't hold the weight, and the book crashed to the ground. A gentleman nearby kindly picked it up and placed it on my lap. I opened it, flipped through a few pages, then closed it. It's in Latin, I exclaimed. Of course. What other language would it be in? The girl looked at me in surprise. Right, because why write books in Russian? I muttered. Where's the ritual? At the beginning. Natalie leaned over, flipped to the second chapter, and pointed. At the top of the page, it read, Spiritus Futuriadmi. What does it mean? I asked. You don't know Latin? The young woman seemed surprised. Not particularly useful these days. I shrugged. It says, Spirit of the future, come to me. Huh, it looks a bit like English. I mused. Most European languages have Latin roots, Dmitri said smugly. I see. But did you read further? Maybe it also says how to send the spirit back. I didn't read further. Marie admitted, lowering her eyes. Unbelievable irresponsibility. Dmitri exclaimed. How could you? Keep reading, Marie. See if there's a way to return us. The gentleman beside me handed her the book, and she began reading, moving her lips and tracing the lines with her finger. We're in quite the mess, my friend, I said to Dmitri. If she doesn't find a way back, she'll be in trouble. Dmitri huffed. You're lucky you're still a young man, but I'm an old wreck, and a woman no less. Stop talking about my mother that way. Marie snapped. Sorry, I conceded. Marie suddenly gasped. I found it. Here it is. She read aloud, Reducing Spiritum Retro. That means returning the spirit, she clarified. And Dmitri leaned forward. She continued, Spiritus redibit per horum. A collective sigh of relief passed through the crowd. What does it mean? Dmitri asked eagerly. The spirit will return to its body within the hour. Thank God. Dmitri exhaled, sinking into his chair. I glanced at the clock. It was 5 minutes to 1. 5 minutes left. Marie suddenly rushed to us. Tell me about my future. Who will I marry? Will I be happy? Will it be for love? Dmitri sighed. Women always the same. Wait, Dmitri, I stopped him. Maria, listen to me carefully. You are going to be a very happy woman. You will marry for love, and everything will turn out well for you. But remember these 3 conditions you must fulfill for it to happen. 1. You must transfer all your assets and your family's funds to American banks before 1914. 2. Before 1914, you must move to America. Los Angeles will be the best choice. Buy as much land as possible there and never sell it. Only rent it out. The land will appreciate in value every year, and you will earn millions from it. Trust me, right now, it costs next to nothing, and Los Angeles is just a provincial town. But in 10 to 15 years, the city will start growing and will turn into a metropolis, the center of a global art form called cinema. 3. Many men will propose to you, but choose only the one who truly captures your heart. Do not look at his wealth. You will be wealthy enough yourself. You will be able to marry the one you love, not the one your aristocratic parents push upon you. In America, nobility won't matter. Only money will. And you will have plenty of it. Follow these rules, and you will be happy. Do you understand? Yes, I understand, the girl nodded. Moving to America, transferring the money, buying land. I repeated the conditions for a happy marriage once more. Yes, I understand. The clock began a 5-second countdown, and then a solitary bong rang out, signaling that midnight had arrived. But nothing happened. Damn it! Dmitri had just started to curse when everything went black. Then a bright flash of light exploded in my mind. My head was ringing like a church bell. My vision slowly cleared. I was back in my chair again. Turning my head, I saw Dmitri squinting at me. I glanced at the clock. Midnight. What was that? A dream or reality? I must have dozed off, I said, breaking the silence. Me too, Dmitri replied. Did you dream of anything? I asked him. Just nonsense. Nothing worth mentioning. And you? Nothing clear. I decided to lie. Could it really have been a dream? Most likely. If it hadn't been, Dmitri wouldn't have stayed silent. Or maybe he also felt awkward talking about what he saw. I studied Dmitri carefully. He was calmly sipping his whiskey with his eyes closed. No, it was unlikely he had experienced the same thing I had. He was far too relaxed. We should probably get some sleep. We have an early morning ahead, Dmitri said, finishing his drink. Agreed. I downed mine and placed a glass on the table. As I jumped up from the chair with ease, I remember how weak and old I had felt in it just half an hour ago. How wonderful it was to be young. I couldn't help but smile. What's so funny? Dmitri squinted at me, patting my arms and legs. I replied with the first thing that came to mind. I just sat too long. My muscles got stiff. Got it. Dmitri responded. We went to our rooms and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning we left for Kiev, and the New Year and Christmas festivities swept me into their whirlwind. As it turned out, there was no real need to return to Mirorod. At least, not for long. I mailed hotel keys back to the owners and completely forgot about that night, or rather, buried it in the farthest corners of my memory. But a couple of months later, I received a message from Dmitri via Viber. We had exchanged numbers. After the usual greetings, he added at the end, "Open this link. It will either interest you or it will confirm that I just had a very strange dream." I clicked the link. It led to an article in some magazine about notable residents of Mirorod. It described the family of Count Nowitzki, the Count himself, his wife, and their young daughter. They lived in a mansion on Yekaterinoslavskaya Street. They were well known in their circles, particularly for their interest in the occult. They frequently held seances in their home. One such session became famous and was documented in many personal diaries of local aristocrats. On New Year's Eve, 1905, the Nowitzkis hosted a grand gathering attended by the elite of Mirorod. The seance that night was said to be extraordinarily successful. Many guests claimed that the Nowitzkis had truly managed to summon spirits. However, a notorious playboy and ladies' man, Captain Serge Palinsky of the Hussar Regiment, dismissed it all as an elaborate hoax and cheap theatrics. As for the Nowitzkis' later fate, it was known that in 1911, Shortly before World War I, the entire family unexpectedly moved to the United States. At the time, people were bewildered as to why such a noble family would leave Europe for the Wild West, a land of immigrants and the poor. However, as history unfolded, the Novitskys became one of the largest landowners in America, amassed incredible wealth, and formed the backbone of a new American aristocracy. Particularly famous was Maria Novitskaya, the Count's daughter. She was a true matriarch of the vast and influential Novitsky dynasty. It was under her direction that nearly all the land surrounding Los Angeles was acquired, followed by properties in other cities, including New York. She passed away in 1975. When journalists asked her about the secret to her success, she always replied, "I believe the words of Alexander, born in 1979. That's my only secret." She added, "I would have loved to thank him, to know more about him. But aside from his name and birth year, I know nothing else about him. I would have given him millions of dollars, but I don't know who he is or what he looks like. I only know when he is. But I am endlessly grateful to him. Because of his 3 rules, I followed them, and I truly achieved everything I wanted." Such strange words. No one, except perhaps her closest confidants, ever understood what she meant. Who was Alexander? How was he connected to this? And what rules did she follow? Maria never revealed the answers. The secret died with her. Additionally, the Novitsky mansion gained a sinister reputation. People said that because of the frequent seances, spirits had taken residence there, especially around New Year's Eve. The house changed owners frequently. Despite its grandeur and relatively low price, few wanted to buy it. That was the article. I sat, pondering Dmitri's message and the article's contents. So, it wasn't just a dream. Dmitri had been there too. I had dismissed that night, but he hadn't. And he had uncovered the truth. That's the power of an engineer's mind. Well done. Had I done the right thing by giving Maria that advice? In a way, I was responsible for the existence of such an influential American dynasty. The only family comparable to them was the Kennedys, both filled with congressmen, governors, judges, and prosecutors, both district and federal. Without me, none of this would have happened. Or rather, without Maria Novitskaya, who believed the words of spirit from the distant year 2005,